Hi, everyone on Zoom. We're about to get started.
Do I need a special mic or right there? Can you see me? All right. Hi, everyone. We're going to get started now. So our Zoom audience is listening, so we need to be quiet so I can talk. Thank you. We're getting started. Oh, hi, everyone out here in the audience. It's wonderful to see such a nice crowd for our speaker tonight. And it's great to have everyone on Zoom as well. We're back at Matthaei tonight as a one-off. We'll be back at the library next month. And we look forward to seeing you all there. I'm Juliette Berger. I'm the president of Washtenaw Bird and Nature Alliance. Most of you know me, and many of you know I'm planning to retire from the presidency of our organization in June. So if you're interested in helping out in our search for officers for another president, or you're interested in being the president, let someone on our nominating committee know. Jessica, our secretary, is on the nominating committee. Keith Dickey, our treasurer, is also on the nominating committee, and others. So we hope to get to hear from some of you, and thanks. Usually at the beginning of our programs, we talk about interesting bird sightings. So I will ask if anyone's seen anything cool, but before you tell me, I'm going to tell you that I had a golden winged warbler in my yard last week. Yeah, I know. I'm still not breathing properly, and I did not have my camera, but I got a really great look at him, and he was fantastic. He was in my redbud tree in a curled up leaf, and he extracted a moth or a caterpillar from the curled up leaf. Yeah, so it was really great. And then I ran inside to get my camera. Of course, he was long gone when I came out 30 seconds later, but you can't forget that intensely gorgeous bird. Anyway, anybody else have any interesting bird sightings? Yes, Jackie?
I had a kestrel zoom through.
Nice. Oh, did he get somebody?
I'm not sure.
Oh.
He disappeared as quickly as he came.
Jackie Waldeck had a kestrel zoom by her feeders, and she thinks he may have gotten one of her birds. Yeah. Joe in the back. It was the harvest moon. Mm-hmm.
Which turned out to be the food one. But as we were out there, we heard
Three screech owls? Wow.
I was like, oh, she screeched, and I'm almost like, I'm really hurting.
Yeah.
Like failure, but it was really cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So Joe Kennedy's telling us about 3 eastern screech owls singing. Was this in your yard?
Yeah.
Well, in his yard over north on Dixboro. Yeah. Anybody else? Well, come to our Thursday morning walks if you want to see some good birds. We've been having some really good times there. We got onto some nice warbler flocks last week near the boardwalk, which has not been restored yet since the big storm last fall. But I'm told by the end of the fall season, there should be a boardwalk there. I'm not sure I believe it, but we've seen some olive-sided flycatchers, and we're seeing some good birds. So there's more to come. There'll be more sparrows and vireos and whatnot to see. And of course, then as we get into October, we'll be looking for the orange-crowned warbler. Yeah, my nemesis bird. I'll talk a little bit about upcoming field trips we have. On Saturday, we have a BIPOC walk, I believe, at Matthaei, no, at the ARB. Check the website for details. And Sunday, we're going to the Detroit River Hawk Watch in Lake Erie Metro Park. And it's Hawk Fest weekend this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. There'll be experts on hand to help people ID birds and to learn more about the hawks that are migrating through this time of year and throughout the season. And we'll be there on Sunday at 10. And if you need a ride or you want to carpool, we'll be meeting at the Plymouth Road Park and Ride at 9. We'll be doing some walking for warblers while we're waiting for the raptors to come through as well. So it should be a good time if you can come. Keith, yes.
Do you have a recap on the chimney swift?
Oh, yeah. So Chimney Swift, Swift Nights Out was last month, and we haven't seen each other since then. I've got a spreadsheet that's going to be coming out in the newsletter later this week or next week. But some of our largest roosts for Chimney Swifts were at Mac School on the west side of Ann Arbor. There was a huge roost in the downtown Ann Arbor area. You could see if you were standing on top of the William Street parking structure, or Washington Street parking structure, and it was above Kilwin's and Sotini's sub shop. So there were several thousand birds using that roost. And my favorite spot, I shouldn't give it away because then everyone will descend upon it. But if you go to Jones Drive in Ann Arbor, there's a historic and beautiful building called the Northern Brewery and has a cool looking chimney. And you feel like you're in the middle of a dark forest. And then the birds come in and it's just really picturesque. There's not a lot of traffic or anything. Ypsilanti at St. Luke's was a good roost. Milan's city office buildings were a good roost, and Celine's First Presbyterian had a lot of swifts roosting there. We had several dozen volunteers, which makes me so happy. And it's great to get people from the community involved with the chimney swifts. Yes, Joan?
Do you have any more information about what's going on at Whitefish Point? I read an article that said they're really short of volunteers and band.
Yeah, I don't have the full story, but Whitefish Point Bird Observatory is suspending its owl banding for the fall, and they're kind of reprioritizing some things there. So I think more will be revealed, and check the Whitefish Point Bird Observatory Facebook page. I looked on the Michigan Audubon website and I didn't find anything until I went onto Facebook. So, yeah. I'm sorry, if you needed me to repeat the question, there are questions about what's going on at Whitefish Point. There've been some long-running surveys.
Oh, see, this is other junk.
Discontinued. Anything else from the? So check the website and the Facebook page. There's lots and lots of field trips coming up, and Matthew hasn't put everything up yet. So there'll be more and more to come this fall. In a few weeks, we'll have the big sit, second Saturday of October at Independence Lake. And there'll be trips to Watkins Lake and other things, in addition to the Thursday morning walks that go through the end of October. I'll invite Mike Sefton up to talk about upcoming programs and to introduce our speaker. That's you.
That's me.
Yeah.
Tonight, as you know, we're pleased to have Ramamurthy giving her talk. Ram is retired, and in his spare time, besides traveling the world in search of birds, raises money for scholarships to send kids to bird camps in India. Next month, Victor Chin will give us a talk on the birds of Taiwan. And in November, Heidi Trudell will talk about new developments in preventing window strikes by birds. After that's the Christmas bird count in December. No program determined yet for January. In February, Keith Dickey will give a photography workshop with some of his pals that will help us all take better bird pictures. Take it away, Ram.
Sure, thank you. Good evening. I think I've got a lucky hat. I changed my white hat to a blue hat, and it should be bringing me some luck. And some of you know what I'm talking about, because if I get to the end of 32 slides, I would consider myself extraordinarily lucky today. So let's hope that we do that today. This presentation is about our reflections from birding in Southern Africa in December of last year. And something that I'd been planning for about 12 years, and but it took some time to get there. You know, I was just about ready to get retired, and so I rolled in my vacation and took off on the 6th of December, retired on the 6th and left on 6th evening to South Africa. So that's the way it was planned. We had company, of course, my wife Sudha, she's here. And then Kathy Burgess, she used to live in Lansing. She may be on the Zoom call today. I may have even my host from South Africa, maybe not, because it's past midnight for him and he's traveling and he may not have internet. So Kathy originally was from Lansing, and she had met with us in many occasions birding within Michigan, and also on some of the birding trips in Tucson and in San Diego birding festivals. So we knew her by association, and then she decided to join, and so she was with us the entire time. And that was our van. And you can see we went during the wet season. You can sort of get a feel for what it is, the wet season, because even as we were taking pictures, it was pouring. This was at the entrance of one of the gates, as Kruger gate at Kruger. So yeah, we'll talk about the wet season as well. So that is, by the way, the bird here is, the picture is not from me. I will actually mention where this is from. In fact, all the credits are actually on the slide. And Warwick is a very well-known wildlife photographer in South Africa. He's a good friend of our host. And he's got a website where he promotes his pictures, not for sale, just for advocacy purposes. So Robert, our host, got permission to use some of his pictures. So this is the Southern Ground Hornbill. We'll get a little bit more deeper into this bird. This is one bird that I absolutely had to see, because I'd seen it once in 2013. This is our second visit to South Africa, but we went during the dry season. And then it was definitely not for birds. And we'll talk about the difference between dry season and wet season in a few slides from now. And that's the Southern Ground Hornbill. And in every bird that at least we have photographs for here, I will talk about what is its ICUN status, because that's something of big concern. 12.5% of our birds, about 137 of them are likely to become extinct. And my goal has been to see those birds which are most likely to going to be gone in my lifetime. So that's been the only goal that I have now. If I have to go see birds, I would rather see those birds and see if I can help in some way. And that was the same thing when we went to Rajasthan a few years ago. That was my last presentation here. And so Southern Ground Hornbill is something that we had seen in 2013, and we saw it again this time. It's an endangered bird. It's in the threatened status. And its only sanctuary is the Kruger National Park. There it's completely protected in all possible ways. So we'll talk about that in some more detail soon.
Yep, 98% of the tech, right?
Yes. So what will we cover today? We'll talk about some Kruger National Park facts. It's a massive place. It's a huge place. To me, it reminds me of Yellowstone National Park in this country. It's tough to see Yellowstone in one visit. We just realized that we were there in mid-August. I realized that very, very quickly. 5 days, we covered only about 30%. So Kruger is a very, very large park, and we'll talk about some facts associated with the park. Oops, I didn't intend that. Let's see what I do here. Yeah, I would leave this alone. We'll talk about what did we do to overcome jet lag. We actually built in some birding, and we'll talk about where we stayed and how easy birding was as a part of getting over jet lag. And then we'll talk about our Kruger journey, and then we'll talk about park maps. And the reason I want to talk about Kruger park maps is not to just show you a map, but to show you the diverse habitats. Because it is a place where, although we covered only the bottom 1/3 of it, you saw such diverse habitats. And that's what houses some of these birds that we were targeting. So we'll talk about that. And then, of course, we do have to answer this question. Why would we go when we expect rain every day in the afternoon, pouring rain, where we have to pull down our tarps? And why is that so important? Why do we have to select between November and February to bird in South Africa and Kruger? We'll talk about that in some detail. And then in order to sort of focus on the birds that we saw, I thought about this a lot. And then I said, let me bin them into 3 categories. Ones that are of very dear to me, which are the endangered birds, which we know are endangered, which are likely to be gone in the next 10 to 15 years if we don't do anything. Then, of course, one of the reasons we go there in the wet season is because the migrants show up. But there's a reason why migrants show up during the wet season. We'll talk about that momentarily. So we'll talk about some of the champions of migrants. And one of the birds that I'll talk about was the subject of a discussion here about 7 years ago. We gave a talk on our birding in southern India, and we talked about a bird, which we'll bring that back, and that's the Amur falcon. And so that's a bird that's a long distance migrant, full migrant, and we'll talk about that. And then, of course, we'll talk about some other birds. And of course, everybody would like to get a trip statistic. So I've got the trip statistic as well. And then Mike, I remember about 4 or 5 months ago, corresponding with him, he said, hey, did you see anything else other than birds? I said, yeah, I did. He said, it would be good to include some of them, right? I said, okay. I had no intent to include anything but birds. But then I said, you know what? Since we did see them, we appreciated them. And so I have something called Beyond Birds and some thoughts, some reflections, that is, including what went well and what would we do knowing what we knew if we went in there again under similar circumstances. So some reflections and some credits, and of course, be happy to answer questions. In every slide where I have a bird, where we discuss about a bird, I'll not only have a picture, but I'll also talk about its ICUN status. I will also talk about whether it is a migrant or not. And then I'll also talk about some other facts associated with that bird. And being a process guy all my life, all slides will look almost identical, except for the bird and some data. The format will look almost the same because I have the same theme going across, and it made it easy for me to tell a story. Okay, for photo credits, those pictures where I do not have a name, those pictures came from Robert, our host, and our naturalist, our host. And we've known him for 10 years plus, because I went with him in 2013 when we went in the dry season, and then went with him. He's a birder. And then his partner is Ruan. we have some pictures from Ruan, and I mentioned his name. And of course, we got permission from Warwick for some of the birds. And then, of course, there are a few pictures from me. Birding in Kruger is the perfect definition for roadside birding, because except for the birds that you see at camp, 100% of the birding that happens outside of camp, outside of the gates of the camp, you have to be inside your vehicle all the time. The vehicle could be stationary. That's fine. It's possible because the speeds are pretty low, 50 kilometers an hour, and there's plenty of room. It's a divided highway and plenty of places to stop. And but all the birding happens from inside your vehicle. Hopefully it's not raining. Even if it's raining, there were some birds that we didn't care if it was raining or not. We still stuck our head out and drenched with our binoculars out, and we could still see those birds because we were not going to come back to the same place again. So that's something that is important to know. It's not like you're going to go trekking somewhere. That's a whole different thing in Kruger because of those wild animals. You are not even allowed to stick your hand out. So that's one of the reasons why we go with a professional, because they know just about every possible rules and all the nuances associated with them. So that's important. Okay, some facts. This is a very old park. It's established in 1898 as a game reserve. 1927, it was opened for public. It's 218 miles north to south, so it's pretty big. And think about this, with all the people and also with all the jams from wild animals, anywhere from elephants to hippos to the wild dogs, also occupying the road, and plus 50 kilometers an hour type of thing. It is very, very slow traveling inside Kruger National Park. So it is almost the size of Belgium. So there are many, many entrances to Kruger National Park. We use 3 of them. Over 500 bird species show up there, some including endemic. And just like there is the big 5 for animals, there is also something called the big 6 for birds. The ones that are highlighted in green are the ones that we did see. We didn't see the Pell's fishing owl. We were not even anywhere close to where that bird would have been seen. It has 12 rest camps. That would be equivalent to our national park lodges. That is, inside the park, you have a government-run camp. And the camps are all barricaded with electric fences, and they close strictly at 6:30. In fact, the gates, once they close, they will not open again. And if anybody who's supposed to be inside comes in late, they'll be barred from coming into Kruger again. So the people who actually take us, they are so conscious of this. So they will scramble and they'll get you back in safely in time. So we lodged at Protodiscop, Lower Sabi, Satara, and Skukuza rest camps. And all of them have 1 or more restaurants. And some of them have a gift shop, very large ones. One of them has a post office and a bank. That Skukuza is one of the largest rest camp that we have inside the park. And of course, they have very strict open and close hours. Between camps, when you are birding within Kruger, you typically choose, depending on the number of days you have, you choose a region that you would explore. And the region that you explore, region meaning habitat that you are going to explore, which automatically ties to certain types of birds that go with it. And of course, I'm assuming that you are going during the season, wet season, because that's where you will see all the migrants. So given that, you have to travel between camps. And if you are going to stay in the camp overnight, you want to be back. So you want to choose different routes. But what happens between camps? There are some of these picnic spots, as they call them, completely non-barricaded. So here you are up in the wild, right? 10 yards from there, you're not supposed to get down of your vehicle, but there you are in the picnic spots where that's where you have your restrooms. And I'll recall an episode much, much later about the importance of having a host from locally, because you have, wild animals roaming around. Yes,
Oh, I heard you say that the doors close at 6:30. What time do they open in the morning?
6:30. Actually, I'll take that back. If you're joining officially on a game drive, which is sponsored by the park, which is by the camp, like for example, let's say you are in Skukuza, you can go sign up for a ride with them. And in fact, the fact that you're staying there, it entitles you to one free ride, either morning or in the evening. But you can go sign up for more. Let's say that you're there for 3 nights. If you have 3 rooms, you're entitled for 3 different rides, right? So you can go sign up for more. But those folks, they can stay up till 9 o'clock. And we did take one of them. We got some of the night jars from, they hand, of course, the driver gets in, he'll give you this huge bazooka-like flashlight. It's a massive, I don't know what kind of battery it has, man. It's got, oh my God, it can light up the whole place. So that's what he gives. And he has no clue which bird is going to be out there. So thanks to our host who is with us in the bus, we were able to get all the night jars. He said, hey, stop right here. That's what we have here, and so on. Yes. Did I answer your question?
Oh, it's over.
Yeah.
And not anymore.
Oh, sure. No, it's my habit, right, from work. Make sure that we answer the question. So yeah, picnic spots that's what it is. It's equivalent to our rest areas, in between, or we would call trailheads in our national parks, or pullouts in our national parks, which are out in the open, right? Yellowstone would have all these trailheads, which are completely out in the open. A speed limit, as I mentioned, is 50 kilometers an hour. So what did we do? Because it's such a long journey to get to Kruger. We flew from Detroit to Atlanta, and Kathy joined us in Atlanta. And then we flew, I think, 9.5 or 10 hours straight to Johannesburg. And then we said we had designed to stay there for 2 nights. So we got there at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The flight was on time. And we got there at about 3. We checked in. Oh, this is an interesting one. We had arranged for transportation. We had 3 people and we were going to India from there. And so we had a lot more luggage than we would normally do. So we had told them that we are so many people I'd even sent a picture. Knowing me, you should know that's what I would have done. I sent a picture from the check-in place as to all the luggage we have. And they sent us the smallest car possible to pick us up. I can't believe that how much we could fit into this one little car. I was hardly breathing. There was no more oxygen left because it was all taken up by suitcases. So yeah, it was, but we stayed at a place called, at a hotel, at a boutique hotel, where I show this red triangle, which you can see probably on the left-hand corner at the bottom. I think I'm showing the cursor there. I don't think you see the cursor. I see it. Okay. So at the bottom left, there's a little red triangle. That's where it's called 108. That's the boutique hotel. It's right across from, it's an aerial picture of Korsman Bird Sanctuary. It's completely fenced, maintained by volunteers. And I'd read about it. I'd corresponded with them in advance. And we were so lucky that the president of the association she was actually working that day, pulling all the invasive plants out there. So we were let in, and we got, I would say, 34 birds in 3 hours. And most of them lifers, as you would know. For us, I was not paying attention to birds in 2013 because there were not many. The few that I did see, I remember, but didn't see many in summer at that time. And yeah. The notable ones that I have here are the masked weaver. And I do want to some footnotes here because I did all my research. And the one up here, which is vermilion in color, you can't miss it. It's the southern red bishop. It's a sparrow-like bird, which you can't miss. And it's very common in Kruger as well. And not a migrant. And it's least concern from an ICUN status. It's no problem, you find them everywhere. And the population trend is stable. And this is the southern masked weaver. And it's also of least concern. And it's typically found near water in winter, and in summer, it's in the savanna areas. And this is the Cape glossy starling, again, least concern. It's a resident bird, not migrant at all. So that's what we did. We spent an entire day birding here. We spent 3 hours in the morning and about 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. And we walked around the fence, and it was 1.4 kilometers to walk around the entire man-made pond. And yeah, that was our experience getting over jet lag. And the next morning, Robert came to pick us up, and we were off to Kruger. We started from our hotel early in the morning, and we got to the Numbi Gate. We lodged at the Pretoria Scope rest camp for the night. We birded all day, and we made our way to Lower Sabi. That means in some places, we just stayed overnight. And Robert would tell us, hey, don't unpack, because we're going to leave very, very early in the morning. We're going to get breakfast on the way somewhere, and we'll just go from there. And where do we get this breakfast? You know, these picnic spots that I talked about, they have some eating places there. And yeah, you can get some eggs and so on and so forth. So even for vegetarians, we didn't find any problems at all. So that's where we ate on our journey. And then we stayed at Lower Sabi. These were the rooms that we were staying in. So Pretoria Scope, Lower Sabi. For some reason, I don't have a picture of Skakuza. And that's a picnic area right there. And typically you will have somebody writing a bird art. It's very common to see a bird art along with the menu. I thought it was pretty cool. So I just took a picture of that. And the one at the bottom is Victoria Falls, in Zimbabwe. So we flew from South Africa to Zimbabwe, and then we went to Victoria Falls, we flew into Victoria Falls, and then we birded there for 2 days, and we came back, and right after the flight coming back to South Africa, we were on our way to India, and Kathy was on her way to the US. This is the map that I was talking about. And what's of real interest is the one on the right, the map on the right. It's the same thing. The one on the left is just a route map, just to sort of give you an idea about where we were. And, but you can see, we were at the bottom 1/3 up to Satara. That's how far north we went to. So we were in this bottom 1/3, let's say, about. And within that, you have woodlands, the pickets, wooded savanna, open savanna and grasslands. So I had known about this well before I got there. So I knew if I was going to see the Kori Bustard, if I was going to expect to see the ostrich, if I was going to expect to see the secretary bird, I would not expect to see them anywhere near Matthaei, Skakuza, or Pretoria Scope, or even Lower Sabi, or near the Crocodile Bridge. I knew that I had to get up to the open grasslands in order to see them. So this actually helped to know the habitat and know the birds that we expect to see. So that was the useful feature about this map, to study this map well ahead of time. So when I spoke to Robert and I said, hey, here were the birds that are of interest, and I said, I wanted to make sure that we cover our journey, which included these kinds of habitats. So that was the primary reason for, okay, I have to answer this question, which I posed earlier, which is, why would you go when you know that it's going to rain every day in the afternoon, pouring rain in the afternoon, at least for 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, it pours. And dry season typically is where a lot of people go there, tremendous influx of tourists during the dry season, but that's primarily to see the big five. the animals. Of course, there are birds. There are some, definitely there are resident birds. Any birds which is not migrating here that I showed, Kruger is a resident bird. There are plenty of them, but you don't see that many. But you don't go there for birding either, because there's so many people for seeing the big five. But the wet season is a massive influx of bugs. Close to 3,000% increase in bugs during the wet season. So I did not know this on day one. The consequence of leaving your light on at night outside your door. But it had a double-edged sword. It had a massive advantage of sorts, and it was also a disadvantage in the morning to walk out. And of course, you didn't want to see the people who came there to clean. As long as you left well before they came, you were going to be good. Otherwise, you would get frowned upon. So otherwise, you would get a warning. If you're going to be there for 2 nights and you left it there, they'll actually come back and tell you, yo, please don't do this. It's not a good thing. So I left on day one at Protoscope. We somehow felt safer leaving the lights on outside. Next day in the morning, I get up early, and of course, we were going to leave at about 6:30, and I woke up at 5:30. There was light outside, and I saw 5 yellow-billed hornbills right at my door on the other side, chewing on all those bugs. And I said, wow, this is a pretty cool thing to do. So if I can only get away, nobody had told me anything about, hey, don't do this. So I made that as a habit till somebody told me. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to do this, because it's going to be a huge mela of birds right outside your door, as you leave in the morning. So I can actually, Jessica, I was going to say, for anybody interested in these slides, you have them. You can go ahead and send them. So, anybody interested in these slides, you can actually have them. So nobody's at all. So the wet season has this massive increase in bugs. And of course, the birds come there for the bugs. So a huge 500 some odd birds migrate in there. So intra-Africa birds, and of course, birds coming all the way from China, and birds all the way coming from Northern Europe. So we will see one example of each. Intra-African birds, and then of course we'll see the full migrants, the stalwarts coming in from Europe, and also coming in from out in the east. So high humidity and heavy downpours during the early afternoon. We didn't care, absolutely, because we knew that going in. We knew exactly what to expect. And of course, you roll your tarp down, and every time Robert would spot a bird and we would stick our head out, we would still get to see the birds. And especially all our luggage, he had put tarps on top of that. We never got wet. So we had absolutely no trouble whatsoever. We loved the wet season there. So totally, we saw about 200 birds. Hence, I'm not going to be talking about all 200 birds. So the question was, how do I arrange this talk? So for me, what was of interest is to talk about endangered and threatened species, for which I've got the Southern Ground Hornbill. I'll talk about the hooded vulture and Bateleur. And then I've got a few migrants during the wet season, the violet-backed starling, the Amur falcon, the European bee-eater. We'll talk about that. And some other residents. The African finfoot, it's a very unique bird. We'll talk about that in some detail. We saw that on the Zambezi River in Victoria Falls. I definitely had Kori Bustard on my list, secretary bird. Woodland kingfisher is not something that you'll miss. It's something like, it's everywhere. And we'll definitely talk about that. It's an intra-African migrant, but it's a very interesting intra-African migrant. We'll talk about that. And of course, the lilac-breasted roller. And Mike, I'd sent a couple of pictures for him to put in. He said, no, these don't cut it. Then I said, okay, so let me send you about 15 of them. So he chose the lilac-breasted roller, and I'm not going to blame him for that because it's an awesome bird to put a picture on. So anyway, that's something that we'll talk about too. I had no intent of talking about the lilac-breasted roller, but then it got on the website, and I said, no, we got to talk about this bird now. So yes. Thank you, Mike. So the first category that we have is endangered and nearly threatened species. And I just want to take a moment, which is not on the slide. I put them in my footnotes. So every bird that I want to see or have seen, I go to the ICUN red list because I want to see where does this bird stand in terms of its status. Is it least concern? Is it endangered? Is it vulnerable? Because that's something that's of interest to me. So I always go look into the International Union of Conservation of Nature, which was established in 1964. They have this red list, which is considered to be the barometer for biodiversity. They have 3 categories of subjects, which are a part of the ICUN red list: birds, animals, and fungi. They are the only 3 categories that are listed. About 165 of them are on the red list. 12% of them are birds out there. So, and these ICUN, apart from my own interest, personal interest, it triggers advocacy, triggers research, it triggers policy making, decision making, and so on. So where do we put the efforts on, and so on and so forth. So, all right, first bird, the Southern Ground Hornbill. I was dying to see this because I'd seen it in 2013. It crossed the road. 3 of them, it always usually, it's in a group. It always goes in a group, and we saw, it's a predator, all right. It's, as you can see, it is endangered. It's vulnerable. Habitat is Sahara and grass and wetlands. And one of the reasons why in fact, it is considered to be a relatively safe bird inside Kruger National Park, because every threat it has outside of Kruger National Park, like loss of habitat, is the primary reason, where it's losing its territory, losing its status to be there for a long period of time. So, but in Kruger, it's a relatively stable population within Kruger. But the trend elsewhere around the world, around sub-Saharan Africa, is definitely going down. Lives a pretty long life, 31.3 years. By the way, every piece of information that I present here comes from the ICUN, because it not only gives you range maps, it gives you the status, it tells you its ecology, it tells you behavior, it tells you everything that you need to know. So I felt that that was good enough for me to actually standardize this template. It's a cooperative breeder. That is, a number of them will actually tend to the young ones. It's pretty tall. We saw, every bird that we saw were about 4 feet tall, and they're about 7 to 14 pounds. It's a pretty big bird. Eats reptiles, frogs, snails, insects, small mammals. It's known for it. It's and birds, of course, and birds. Large cavities in trees. In fact, the first set of hornbills we saw was pouring rain. They were soaking wet way high on a tree. So we spent half an hour or so watching it in soaking rain. Of course, we couldn't get any of the pictures because it was so rainy, but we could get good views from the binoculars. So, and later on, towards the end, near Skukuza, it's a really reliable place where Robert took us, where we saw about 4 of them on the ground. And in some cultures, it's also known to be a barometer for weather. They watch the Southern Ground Hornbill to sort of predict what kind of weather is expected. So this is a bird that we wanted to see, and we did get it. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, are those parasites on the neck there?
Actually, I do not know. I can actually get back to Jessica with an answer. If Robert was there, I would have asked him. I don't think is he on? No, he's not. Okay, so I'll promise. No, I will get the answer to you. because good, excellent, awesome question, but I do not know the answer. I will write the answer to Jessica because I'm connected to her on email, so I'll get the answer within days. If I don't know the answer, somebody will know. In fact, I do know researchers in Skukuza camp who are actually in the conservation mode, and if I can dig up their reference, which I should be able to because I have their card, I'll get you the answer one way or the other. I know I didn't answer the question, so. The next one is the hooded vulture. We got really good views of this from a distance. Here's the thing, because of the fact that you cannot get down, it's in a tree 300-400 yards out. You can see them very well from a binoculars. I didn't realize that my spotting scope actually would work really well till this day 3. Then actually, I put my spotting scope inside the Jeep, got my tripod legs to sort of fit into different crevices inside the Jeep, and I was able to get really good looks, but then it's only one person because people can't hop across. It's not like you can't share the scope with others. It's a one-person thing. So I got pretty good views of a few birds that way. So yeah, spotting scope can be done, but again, it's one of those things that not a migrant. It's critically endangered. And one of the primary reasons for it actually losing its standing is because of this carbofuran. It's a carbamate. Those of you, I'm a chemist myself. I'm not an organic chemist. I know there is one organic chemist in the back, but he's gone into food business now. So I don't know if he still remembers his organic chemistry, but anyway, this is a over-the-counter pesticide. And this is used, interestingly, it is used to bait wild animals. So if you have a dead carcass on your property, you would actually go and put the pesticide on the dead carcass so that the hyenas and the wild dogs and the lions would actually go after the carcass and go dead. And of course, the vultures like to clean things up and they fall prey. So they die in large numbers for this. So Mike, if you can come up with a substitute, man, a natural product, that would be helpful to the hooded vulture, I would think. Generation length is about 13 years. And of course, mainly carrion, but will also take in insects and palm fruits as well. Stick nests in tall trees, and incubation is typically about 51 days. And there's your range map. In every one of these slides, I would have a range map as well. Bateleur, endangered bird. And remember, this was the category of endangered birds that we were talking about. In French, it actually means the tightrope walker. Population trend is decreasing, and we saw them hovering, and also we saw them stationary, relatively close, but not close enough for any camera. Although Kathy, I know, had a 600mm camera, she probably has some good pictures of them. And this is from Robert from his travels, because he's lived in South Africa all his life. So it's a kleptoparasite, also loss of habitat and poisoning. Similar poisoning is what's killing them. They hunt over very, very large territory and fly very low to the ground, and that's where we saw them. And interestingly, the juveniles have a longer tail. And in fact, we saw more juveniles than actually fully grown adults, because Robert would point out, hey, look at the tail. If it is sticking out and pretty long, it's actually a juvenile. It actually loses them. And we didn't know this. So what we were actually seeing there were actually juveniles. This is a secretary bird, and it's also endangered. This is a bird that looks like, those of you who've been to Peru or Ecuador have seen the Hudson. It looks like the Hudson to me, if it's in some ways. It's like a prehistoric bird. This is a bird that we absolutely wanted to see. It's a bird of prey. Interestingly enough, it is from the order that it belongs to the same family as hawks, eagles, vultures, kites, but not falcons. Interestingly, I learned today, falcons are more closely related to parrots and passerines. I did not know that. that, this is interesting. You go there and you enjoy all this and you come back and you start doing research, then the amount of learning that you get is millionfold. So for me, it took almost 3.5 weeks to put this together and all the research that went in. But today I was just thinking, if it's a raptor, then I found out it's not a falcon. I said, where's this falcons? So there it is. So yeah, it lives long, nomadic. I've never seen two of them together. I know that Carl went to Kenya recently and they saw a secretary bird. Did you see more than one at a time?
Yeah, we saw.
Okay, there you go. So definitely, we saw just one here, one there. We saw it in Zimbabwe too, but we never saw more than one at a time. Destruction of habitat is another big thing. It can get up to 4 feet, 3 inches. All the birds that we saw were all adults. Diet snakes, small mammals, insects. Only 1 of 2 birds known to hunt on the ground. Stomps on its victims to kill. They very rarely fly. We didn't see the bird fly. We observed them for an hour or so, but we never saw them fly. They nest in acacia trees. They mate for life. Okay, so I know that there are a lot more species out in our list of things that we saw, which were in the red list of threatened and endangered, but I just thought in the interest of time that I would just choose 3, and those were the 3 that I chose. So one of the reasons we went there in the wet season is because of to catch the migrants. So let's take a look at a few migrants. There are a lot, but we'll just look at 2 or 3. But before we talk about the actual birds, let's just get the flyways straight, because it's important to know what the flyways of these birds are in Africa. So you see there is a flyway which is coming all the way from Europe, which is on the left-hand side. That flyway is going deep inside Europe, Northern Europe, past Spain and so on. Then there is a flyway which you can see on the far right, which sort of veers off. That's going all the way to China, Russia and China. I don't show the entire map. But then there is another one which is in between, but there is one which is just intermediate, which just goes up just past the equator. I had to put the equator this morning. I don't think you have it in your slides, Jessica. Oh, you do? Oh, because I had to put it in this morning because there is one bird that you will see where the equator is matters. So I said, if that matters, then I said, well, we got to put a reference on where it is. I knew that the equator divided Kenya directly into half. Half of Kenya is above, half of Kenya is below. So I knew where to put the equator. So there's one set of birds which are intra-Africa, which is just above the equator to below the equator. So there are some birds, and we will choose. And there are some birds which we did not see at all, the altitudinal migrants going from high altitude to low altitude. We didn't see any of them, but I have those as examples. So let's take a look at the first one. It is a full migrant. It is one of the top contender to be a full migrant. It comes from widely distributed in Europe, all the way into China. You see them in India. Yeah, generation length 6.5 year, long haul. Use multiple migration paths. And I show the ones that are inside South Africa, in African continent on the right-hand side here. And they're known to be in southern India. We've seen it in India. And of course, it's also seen in Sri Lanka. So it's got multiple places it goes to, from Europe and Asia all the way to South Africa too. In Africa, in the wet season, you will see them typically in grasslands, savannas, and they nest in sandy banks near river shores. And bees, wasps, hornets, they are known to eat about 250 bees a day. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but they're also known to be ecosystem engineers because of their burrows. They burrow along to help with soil, what do you call, percolation of moisture and so on, and also turnover. So this is something that we saw in Zimbabwe a lot more than we saw in South Africa. This is a bird that you will not miss. I was hoping that the sound would work, but okay. So what I was the reason I put that out there is because when you're in Kruger, when you're traveling,
Try this. Ready to go? No? All right. Work from this.
anyway, the reason I put that sound in there is because when you're traveling in Kruger, this is a bird that you will hear all the time. I'm so sorry that I'm not able to play, but you cannot miss this bird. Not only because it's extraordinarily colorful, but it's also because of the sound. And this sound that I actually have the MP3 for is something that I stuck my iPhone in there because we were so close to this bird on a tree, and I was able to record it on my MP3, and I cleaned it up a little bit on my acoustic software, and then I stuck it in there. But anyway, it's not playing today.
I should be able to play it from Birds of the World in just.
There you go. Oh yeah.
Mike, you're already. You go to the front. Mike, you want to go to the front of the room for the Zoom audience?
Unmistakable.
Nice.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. There are so many ways of solving the problem, isn't it? Thank you. Appreciate it. It takes an army to get this thing together. So it's an intra-African migrant. And here's the interesting thing. The birds, which are 8 degrees north and 8 degrees south of the equator, any woodland, this is based on scientific studies. The woodland kingfishers within that 8-degree band around the equator, they're all sedentary. They just stay put. They don't migrate north. Of course, they don't migrate north at all, but they definitely don't migrate south. Still a research topic. I have no idea. I don't know more, but I'm curious why those do not migrate. Diet, of course, grasshoppers, locusts, beetles, cockroaches, cicadas, centipedes, small birds, lizards, moths. Oh yeah, they've got a huge array to choose from. Large food items are held sideways, bashed against the tree. We did see that at Sunset Dam. And then swallowed. They're cavity nesters, very territorial, and show aggressive tendencies. So this is, and actually on this map on the right-hand side, you see the Africa map. And if you observe closely, there are red, pinkish dots, and there are white dots. I hope you can see them. And interestingly enough, the pink dots are all male, and the white dots are all female. That's interesting. That the flyways are close enough, but they sort of are in a band in itself, and I have no idea. I've tried to look for papers on that topic, and still have not come up with anything. So if I do, I'll let you guys know. Something I'm really curious. And again, it's least threatened. No worries there. Okay, well, we are still talking about migrants. We talked about a migrant coming in from Europe. That's the European bee-eater. And we talked about the intra-African migrant, which is the woodland kingfisher. And now we have the other migrant, which is the Amur falcon, which is coming in from the Far East. It comes from the Amur province in northern China. Then I don't expect you to remember all the details from our talk 7 years ago. But that talk was perfect. I mean, near perfect like today. I don't want to jinx it. So yeah, we presented our study on Amur falcons at that time. And the Amur falcon comes in from the eastern part of India, from China, And then it makes a hard right in the center of India. And at that point in time, India's breadth is only about 600 miles or so. It travels that within a day and a half, and then it goes all the way into Kenya and into South Africa. We saw them in the hundreds. When I first saw them, I got so excited and I said, wow, this is huge. The congregation of these birds. And interesting fact here, this is the only bird that I know of. When I was doing research on this bird, I had learned that this is a bird that refuels in midair because it times its migration along with the dragonfly's migration. So it is like KC-135, planes, feeding the F-16s. So it's just unbelievable. So habitat is forest, grasslands, wetlands, and savanna. Feeds on insects on the ground and capture prey in midair. And they can hover. They refuel in midair. And this is again least concern, not a problem, except for in India, if you recall from my past talk, this bird was persecuted in extraordinarily large numbers, close to 800 to 900,000. About 1 million birds were caught and sold on the street for food. But India has done very well with partners, and they actually have found employment for these people so that they don't have to use this for food. So they're doing really well now. It's still a bird to see during its migration. It's an awesome bird. Other notable birds, and some of them could be threatened as well. So near threatened, Kori Bustard. And for me, this was a must-see because I'd seen its cousin, the Great Indian Bustard, last time that was my talk. The Great Indian Bustard, it's a slightly heavier bird than the Great Indian Bustard. And again, the cause of its demise in South Africa is very similar to the cause in India, getting caught in power lines because it's so heavy. It takes a long runway for it to actually take off, and it just gets caught in the power lines. So habitat again is forest, shrubland, savanna, and we had to go, I don't have the map here. We had to go all the way to Satara here. And interestingly enough, we had not seen the Kori, we had not seen the secretary bird, we had not seen the ostrich. Kathy, of course, she said, I want to see the ostrich. I've seen the ostrich in a zoo. I need to see a real ostrich. Okay. And of course, I wanted to see the Kori and the secretary bird. And we come out into the open and we see all three in one frame. The ostrich. And Sudha tells me this morning at breakfast, he says, hey, I see this picture. I have the picture with all three. I said, too late. She does have a picture with all three in one frame. And then I did see an Amur falcon sitting right behind it. So not a migrating species, 3 to 4 feet tall, 5 feet tall. Wingspan is 7 to 9 feet. Pretty heavy bird, 40 pounds. Pardon me? Excuse me? Okay. Diet, insects, reptiles, small rodents, seeds, berries, roots. Predators are lions, leopards, jackals, hyenas, eagles. 70% of the time they spend time on their foot. I think you folks saw it in Kenya too, right? You saw the Kori Bustard. Did you see them fly at all?
No, mostly.
Yeah. Later on, about 20 days after we were in South Africa, we are not going to talk about that today. We were in India visiting 3 different national parks out in the Northeast. And there we were looking for another cousin of this, which is the Bengal florican. There are only 88 left. And it was, we spent 6.5 hours to see one bird. Somebody said that they are in these agricultural fields. So we were parked and we were walking up and down. And finally, this bird was no more than 10 yards from us. It was so silent, so close, and then he took off on us. So yeah, that was in India, the Bengal florican. So another cousin, same family. And Kruger, yeah, of course, not a migratory species. Yeah. They engage in lek mating. The next bird is also something that this is the least concern according to ICUN status, something that it's so pretty to see, can't miss it, it's so tall. It's least concern from an ICUN status, but in Kruger, it's actually considered as, in South Africa, it's considered as endangered. I still do not know the reason. I'm still working on it to get the reason as to why is it not endangered, is least concern elsewhere, but why is it specifically threatened endangered in South Africa? I do not know the reason. Pretty long-living bird.
You can't see the name of the bird. It's
Oh.
covered up on the screen, so can you tell us?
Oh, Saddle-billed Stork. Oh my God, I did not know that. Okay, there is some Zoom interference there. Okay, it's a Saddle-billed Stork. Okay, I learned a lesson here. Next time, stick those things right smack in the middle. So you learn, so don't stick anything in the edge because it could be gone. So I got it. Okay, again, not a migrant. Beak length is about 14 inches. Every bird that we saw were about 5 foot tall, and they were just doing their thing. And one of them came very, very close to our vehicle as well. Diet fish eaters typically eat frogs and insects. They stab their victims and swallow whole. Okay, there you are, sir. The lilac-breasted roller. I had to put it in there because it was on our website. It's composed of 8 colors, and it's just as pretty as the Indian roller in India. In fact, Indian roller is very pretty when it's flying, but this bird doesn't matter if it's flying or not, it's still pretty. It's got 8 colors, a very stable population, and we saw them every day in large quantities. I was e-birding and I got tired, and I would miss them sometimes. And I said, hey, I did see them. I saw a bunch of them. So, and e-birding is an interesting thing here because you get zero internet of course, it's true in our national parks too. You don't get any internet in our national parks. Same thing. Kruger National Park, you don't get any internet anywhere. And just like our national parks, even in our lodges, it's very unreliable. Even at the Old Faithful Inn, there was virtually no internet. So yeah, eBird, everything was delayed for me. So yeah, you just kept recording it and then posting it. So generation length is about 5.6 years. A non-migrant, definitely goes after bugs. Unofficially, the national bird of Kenya. Kenya has never acknowledged that this is our national bird. They don't want to come to terms with it. I don't know why. Natural, because it's found in other places, I guess. Fiercely territorial. In tribal community, it's known as the bird of peace. The predators are the Wahlberg eagle, the Bateleur, and the peregrine falcon. So we saw them every day, everywhere. This is an eagle which fascinated us. We had a long morning one day at the Lower Sabi camp, and we had our lunch. We decided to go back into the lodge for lunch because we were relatively close. And so Robert knew exactly where to go for this bird. And there were 2 of them. The Verex eagle, named after a Japanese botanist, least concern. Oh, you can't see? You can't see the name. Okay, I got to be conscious of that. A non-migrant, largest owl in Africa. No other owl that we know of has pink eyelids. It is fascinating. This picture doesn't do justice, especially when you see it in a binoculars. It was very close to us. This tree was right next to the road, and this was a dirt road. Oh, no, not that binoculars there. Okay, she's checking this out.
Very cool.
Really? Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay. I thought you just take it to baseball games. No, okay. All right. Yeah, it was unbelievably cool. And it's a pretty big bird, a heavy bird. That's a bird that we saw only once, but the memory of that still is in my head. Some other birds that we saw, and the Kori Bustard, another one in the bustard family. It's I made some notes. Oops. Whoa. Wait a minute. It can't be voice activated. That's where I want to be. Let's talk about that for a moment. A black-bellied bustard is a partial migrant. A partial migrant is one where some birds in that family do migrate, but some birds decide to stay on. Like, for example, the sedentary woodland kingfisher, anything which is plus minus 8 degrees of the equator is not migrant. So, in fact, there's a group of folks in India that I am close with today. They're actually working on the reason why do certain birds of the same family pick up and go while the others decide to stay. Well, the food supply is the same in that place where they left. The next one is the Sabota lark. Those are, believe it or not, my pictures. Not a migrant. We saw it in Zimbabwe, and it's again of least concern. The black-bellied bustard is also of least concern. The violet-backed stalling, picture from Rouen, is an intra-African migrant. Comes in just above the equator down south. This bird, the long-tailed whydah, we couldn't believe what we were seeing. It looked like a ghost. It looked like a phantom. It was on the road. It was wiggling around. It's about that long, and it was wiggling. And for me, I thought it was a snake. I thought it was like a lizard. It was actually a bird. First time we saw, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It's an incredible bird to see. The long-tailed whydah is a non-migrant. It's a pretty nomadic bird, and again, of least concern. The one on the bottom left is the malachite kingfisher. It's a must-see bird for anybody going to Kruger. Again, least concern. In fact, all the birds here are of least concern, so I won't even repeat it. It's partially migratory. Crested barbet, we saw plenty of them, including in the camps. Oh, I just want to make a comment. When we stay in the camp, remember, we come in early, right? Because the gate closes at 6:30, whatever. There's still plenty of light. And in the morning, you're waiting for the lodge to open for their food. So there's plenty of light. So the lodges also have phenomenal birds, especially the Skukuza camp. We got close to 30 birds right there at camp, which we had not seen elsewhere. So that's one of the things that's the only time you don't do roadside birding. I should have said that, you do roadside birding only when you leave the camp, but the campsites themselves are just phenomenal in terms of, so yeah, crested barbet is something that you would see. The African sacred ibis, another partial migrant, the giant kingfisher, we saw it very, very close, just local movements. And the trumpeter hornbill, we saw it in Zimbabwe, just at Victoria Falls. Non-migrant, but it is known to travel as much to 150 kilometers in search of fruit trees. So it's known to travel, but it's not considered to be a migrant. So that's it for the birds. And this is just a purely a statistics type of thing. Those birds that we saw in Zimbabwe, those birds that we saw in Africa, and anything that's in green are the ones that we actually showcased in this talk. So we just thought we would include Phil. But then the next slide, I completely owe it to Mr. Mike Sept. I want to talk about elephants. Oh, Robert has lived in South Africa. He just lives just about 50 kilometers south of the Skukuza Gate, the Paul Gate, as they call it. He was shocked that we didn't see elephants for the first 3 days. Not a single elephant in 3 days. We were in just as much of wild country as possible. We saw nothing. And he honestly did not have an explanation. We were at water holes. We were in every possible habitat. There should have been large concentrations of elephants on the road, by the side, nothing. But then the floodgates opened after day 3. We saw them in the 50s and in the 60s, and huge numbers of them, coming into water holes and so on. So the African elephant, and of course we saw the water buffalo and the oxpeckers that go with them, both varieties of oxpeckers. I don't feature them here. And of course we saw the Nile crocodile, and we saw a lot of baboons, and I'll tell you a story in my next slide. and the wild dogs, and we got a phenomenal sighting of a leopard on a tree. So we were extremely lucky to see that leopard. We thought we had sighted leopards. We had saw some movements behind grass, but this one was just sitting pretty, and he was not moving. So he was quite happy where he was. So we did see these. And okay, as we finish up, some reflections. Why does one need a naturalist? Where do we go with somebody who knows what they're doing? They know all the rules of the park. Like, there are so many of these rules. You can't do this, you can do this, and so on and so forth. So yeah, they keep us safe. Otherwise, you would see people doing stupid things, and these guys are so good in that. They will actually guide others too. Oh, by the way, here's another interesting thing that happened. Remember, we are birders, and the percent birders among tourists in Kruger is, no matter it's wet season or dry season, is still low. Because there are still wild animals there, right? People still come. And what do birders do when they see a spotted bird on a tree? We will pull out and we'll stop. And what's the tendency when you go to a national park or somewhere, when you see a car that stops, there must be something of interest, you stop right behind them. What do you see? Is it a leopard? Is it a lion? Is it a hyena? Is it a python? Birds. So I suggested that we should put a board in the back of the car saying that we are just birders, we are slow. Something like that. Because this happened at least 30, 40 times. They would say, what did you see? What did you see? Where do I see? Where do I see? Oh, it's a bird. Oh, just a bird? People see birds? But then we actually met birders too, and we would exchange some notes. Actually, interestingly enough, we would run across some birders who were prior clients of Robert. They'd been with him in the past, so we exchanged some notes as to what was there up on the left, on the top right, and so on and so forth. So we got some good info, which we always do as birders. So they know where to take us, and a specific target bird like Kori Bustard, secretary bird, the martial eagle, Southern Ground Hornbill, they keep us safe. I'll tell you something about safe. We talked about picnic spots, right? I told you that the picnic spots are not barricaded. The lodges are all barricaded. The camps are all barricaded. The picnic spots are right out in the open. You just take an exit, boom. There's the picnic spot with a whole bunch of people. But with it comes baboons. It's a standard issue. It comes with the picnic spots. And these baboons can be extraordinarily aggressive. The first thing they do is they raid your van. They take anything which is loose or not loose, and they'll go after it. And Robert was the one who was chasing those baboons all the time. And if they were a threat to us, he was sort of saying, hey, be with me, right? Those guys who live there, who stay there, they don't care. But we are so scared of these big, huge guys, especially when they chase after each other and so on. And I had eaten my breakfast or lunch, I don't remember. And I was going to throw away the thing in the trash, my plate. That baboon came flying at me, and I was scared. I was really scared. And there are other reasons why. I have to tell you an unfortunate incident. If I didn't tell you, I think Sudha would actually end up saying it. I don't want her to say it. That's also a rest area, the picnic spots. So I used the rest area, and then my door, which I think was put together about maybe 100 years ago, the door wouldn't open again. I was stuck. And I kept banging, I kept shouting, and I said, and so here is the roof, which is way up on top, and the wall is about 9 feet tall. And I'm stuck inside, I'm shouting and screaming, Robert, Robert, and so on. He's out there, he's seeing where the lions are, pretty close, elephants are, wild, pretty close. And he's looking at that, and then somebody finally got him. And believe it or not, I scaled that 9-foot wall and jumped out of it. I don't think, I could not believe that I've done it in my life. This is a one-time thing. I will never do this again. I will not even attempt this again. So yeah, I had to, because there was no hope. to come out the other day. So, but for Robert to actually help me to come down, I stepped on his, shoulders and he dropped me down slowly. So the host can actually help you. So having a guide who knows what he's doing and is pretty strong and good is helpful. So yeah, that was a scary thought. Yeah, our plan worked perfectly, so we had been planning this for so long and it worked perfect. Everything went to plan. A lot of research before and communication with Robert, and he's so deeply knowledgeable. So he would add all those extras. So research was also very helpful. Food was never an issue. We are vegetarians and we had absolutely no problems in any of the lodges or anywhere. So people went out of the way to fix food for us. So never an issue. What would we do different? If I had to do exactly the same trip, knowing exactly I was going to go during the same season, what would I do? I would still do, I would go with a host with all that. But then I would actually not drive from Johannesburg to the Kruger. That's 5 hours you didn't have to, because I would rather take a very short flight from Skakuza has an airport, believe it or not. Kruger, inside Kruger has an airport. Just like, I think the only national park in the US which has an airport is Jackson Hole. So yeah, Skakuza airport is inside Kruger National Park. And I would just fly there. It would save almost like 6 hours. And Skakuza itself has phenomenal birding right there. So that's what I would do and rest up there. Personally, I had decided long time ago that I wanted to see this the biggest waterfall, like Victoria Falls, which is about 3.6 kilometers wide. I wanted to see it. But for that, I don't think I would go there to Victoria Falls at all, because every bird that's there is also seen here. And I would rather spend time in Northern Kruger, which has very different species, than Southern Kruger. Many birds don't even come to up to Southern Kruger. They just migrate up and stay up in the north, some of the bee eaters and so on. I would actually, if I had to plan this again, because it's so far, from here, it's expensive, it's far, I would explore going into Cape and so on. So if I had to do this again, I would definitely consider those things. So, okay. I'd like to thank Kathy for joining us. I just said, hey, would like to come. She said yes, and we thoroughly enjoyed our company. Robert was awesome. He was meticulous in planning, both in South Africa and in Victoria Falls. We met his family, extensive experience, knowledge of birds and habitat, the mammals and politics and culture and everything. So including educational system. So we talked about every topic possible with him. So it was fantastic for us. That's it for me. This is amazing that I was able to finish 32 slides without a problem. So this place is actually very good. I don't think we should move. Yes.
I have a couple questions, and if you could repeat the question for the Zoom.
Oh,
audience,
absolutely.
that
Will
would
do.
help.
Will do.
Stop the screen shares. Thanks. You mentioned the big 6 of mammals. Could you name them for us?
Big 5, isn't it?
Was it
Big
big
five.
5? Big 5? Okay.
Just a second. Perfect.
Now everyone-
Okay.
Okay, the
I-
big 5 mammals.
I think this is correct. Anybody there, correct me if I'm wrong. It's, of course, the African elephant, the Nile crocodile, the water buffalo, the rhino, and the lion. Yeah, exactly.
The big 5?
Yeah.
Also, when I was looking at birds of South Africa before your presentation, I saw the blue crane. Do you know anything about the blue
Cape,
crane?
got to go to Cape. I was about 6 hours away from the blue crane,
Can you
yes.
repeat the question for the Zoom?
Oh, yeah. The question from Juliet was that, hey, what about this blue crane thingy, in Africa? Actually, there is a very popular, I don't remember the exact name for it, the correct name for it. It's in Cape. It's in the when you bird at Cape. That's a standard bird that people go to see. Yes, ma'am, you had a question, ma'am.
I heard your quandary about Kenya and why they have chosen the wrong bird for their national bird. And I just got back from Kenya and, I know why, because they love the superb starling. It is everywhere and average people know about it, just like they know the robin here.
Got
And the blue jay. And the people love the superb starling. So there you are.
The comment from, what's your name, ma'am?
Dawn.
No, comment from Dawn from here is she had an actual insight into why Kenya is hesitant to name, was hesitant about a certain bird being their national bird because they seem to love their superb starling. Yeah, so yeah, it's about the familiarity, right? And I don't know if on the same topic, I don't know if I told you, I did say the story when I spoke last time. The names of birds can get very contentious because it's a very political decision at the end of the day. The Great Indian Bustard was the actual bird for India, but it got debated in the parliament. And the Prime Minister then, the Jawaharlal Nehru, said, no, we come from the British era. People will call it the Great Indian Bastard. So let's not name that. So they went with the Indian peafowl for that bird. So yes, it can get very, very political in terms of, yeah. Okay, yes.
I wondered if you would announce to the Zoom audience as well as us that the recording of the presentation will be loaded up to our YouTube channel within a few weeks or maybe shorter.
Yeah, I'm just being told for the benefit of all the folks out in Zoom that this presentation in its entirety will be available on their Washington Bird and Nature Alliance YouTube channel in a few days. So you should expect to see it. I think that's going to come from the expertise of Jessica, right? No? Okay, it's a bigger team effort. Okay, sure. So I'll be looking forward to seeing it too. So awesome, very cool. So you should, but she has the actual presentation. So anybody interested, just write to her. You can feel free to have a copy of this because I've got a lot of footnotes and a bunch of slides that I just made notes for. So I'll be more than happy to share that with you guys. So yeah, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.